Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about home alone in the Appalachian Mountains. These stories will make you think twice before spending a night alone out there. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. My parents owned this old house tucked into a hollow way out in the Appalachians. I grew up there, every summer, every holiday. I knew it inside and out, so when my parents said they were heading out for a week and asked if I could house sit, I said yes before they finished the sentence. As soon as I pulled into the gravel driveway, something hit me that I hadn't thought about before. This place is isolated, like really isolated. Living in the city for years will make you forget how empty rural feels. There were no neighbors, no porch lights off in the distance, just the black shapes of trees leaning in, the creek behind the house catching a little glint from my headlights as I parked. That little childhood bubble where the house felt untouchable? Yeah, it popped the second I killed the engine. Still, the first night was fine, actually. It was nice. I did what I always did when I came home. Walked through each room like a ritual, flipping light switches, letting muscle memory take over. The house smelled exactly the same, a faint mix of cedar and that musty old book scent you can never wash out, no matter how hard you try. It felt good, honestly, like nothing had changed. I made a lazy dinner, dug out an old DVD from the shelf, one of those grainy action movies I'd watched 100 times as a kid, and stretched out on the couch. Fell asleep before the credits even rolled. Night 2, same thing. Dinner, movie, check the locks because you know that's what responsible adults do. It was quiet in a way that almost didn't feel real. Not city quiet, not even suburban quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes you aware of every little thing your body does. I could hear myself swallow, hear my own breathing echo. It was unsettling for maybe an hour, then kind of peaceful. I thought, man, why did I ever leave this? By night 3, I was settling into it. Made myself a real dinner this time, not just cereal like the night before. Found this thick old blanket in the linen closet that smelled faintly like cedar and dust, and curled up on the couch again with a movie I barely paid attention to. It felt good. Simple. The only sounds were the soft hum of the fridge and those random groans from the old pipes. I even thought, I could do this for a month. Then I heard it, a knock, not loud, just one, sharp enough to cut through the movie. It came from behind me, the living room window. I froze, staring at the TV like maybe I imagined it, my ears strained. For a second I thought, okay, branch in the wind, no big deal. Then I remembered, the trees are way back. There's nothing close enough to tap that glass. I turned my head toward the curtains, slow, like if I moved too fast it would make a sound I didn't want to hear again. Nothing. The curtains hung still. My throat felt dry. Then, 3 knocks this time, perfectly spaced, deliberate. That's when my skin prickled like 1,000 tiny needles. I stood up, moving toward the window even though every part of me said, don't. I pinched the edge of the curtain and pulled it back, just an inch. The yard was empty, porch light glaring over the gravel drive, trees standing silent and heavy beyond that. Nothing. I let the curtain drop and locked the door, even though I knew I'd already locked it earlier. Then the back door, then the windows. Every single latch got checked twice. My heart wouldn't slow down. It felt like it was thudding up into my throat. I left every lamp on and sat up until nearly 2, waiting for something else. Nothing came. Eventually, I passed out on the couch with the TV buzzing like background noise. Next morning, I went outside. Walked the whole yard, slow. The ground was soft from rain the day before. If anyone had been near that window, there should have been something. Muddy prints, a scuff, anything. But the dirt was smooth, perfect. That night, I locked everything early and went upstairs. I even shoved a chair under the doorknob like I'd seen in movies, like that flimsy piece of furniture was going to do anything. Grabbed a kitchen knife and set it on the nightstand too. Felt ridiculous, but hey, paranoia wins over pride at midnight. Sometime after I finally drifted off, I woke up. Not from a dream. At least, I don't think so. It was a sound. A creak, one slow, heavy groan from the hallway floorboards. My eyes shot open and I just laid there, heart pounding like it was trying to break out of my chest. Then, another creak. Then another. The sound of weight shifting closer toward my door. I grabbed my phone, thumb fumbling for the screen. No service. Just that ugly little no signal icon glowing back at me. The steps stopped outside my door. Dead silence after that. No breathing, no movement, just nothing. I reached for the knife, my fingers shaking so bad the handle nearly slipped. My other hand gripped the chair like it would magically make me safer. My chest burned from holding my breath. Then I moved, fast, shoved the chair aside and yanked the door open in one motion, knife in hand. The hallway was empty. I swept through the whole house, room to room, flinging doors open so hard they banged against walls. Nothing. Both doors still locked, no broken windows. The house was dead quiet again, like it was laughing at me for panicking. I told myself I was losing it. The silence, the isolation. It was messing with my head. But then I walked back into my bedroom and froze. The sheets on my bed weren't the ones I'd been sleeping in. I just stood there staring. The faded blue set I'd curled up in last night, gone. In its place was a crisp white set, clean, perfect, tucked like a hotel bed. I didn't touch them. I didn't pack a bag. I walked backward out of the room with the knife in a death grip, lights blazing behind me, didn't even shut the door, just left. I got in my car and drove. Didn't stop until I had service bars again. My hands were shaking so bad it took me 3 tries to dial 911. The sheriff had to ask me to repeat myself twice because my voice kept breaking. They searched the place, found nothing. My parents swore they hadn't changed the sheets before they left. I spent that night in a motel off the highway, and I haven't slept in that house since. I was staying at my grandparents' old house in the Appalachian foothills. I got there that evening and parked at the top of the gravel driveway. I carried my bags inside. Everything looked exactly how I remembered. There's no cell service out there, not even a single bar unless you drive 20 minutes toward the main road. I already knew that, and honestly, I didn't care. My plan was simple: read, cook easy meals, and get some sleep without hammering over my head. I spent the afternoon opening windows, sweeping up dust, and running through the place like my grandparents taught me. Checking locks, they were almost obsessive about it. Every door had a thick brass deadbolt, and the windows had those old latches that slide into place with a little click. I went room to room, locking and double-checking, not because I was scared, just habit. That house practically trained me to do it. By 9, I'd eaten a quick dinner and settled on the couch with a paperback. The only sounds were the low hum of the fridge and the random metallic pops from the baseboard heaters. Outside, the windows might as well have been black mirrors. No porch lights out there, no street lamps, just a wall of dark pressing against the glass. By 11, I decided to call it a night. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and climbed into bed in the old guest room with my flashlight and my book. Read a couple pages, and then the words started blending together. My eyelids were getting heavy. The first sound woke me at 1:17 a.m. It was faint, but sharp enough to cut through my sleep. A squeal, metal dragging across wood. It took me a second to place it because my brain was still stuck in dream mode, but then it clicked. The front screen door. I sat up fast, heart hammering like it was trying to wake the rest of me. Listened hard. Nothing. Just silence, so thick it almost had weight. I grabbed my phone. No service, of course. Just that smug little no signal glaring back like, yeah, good luck. I set it down and waited another minute, barely breathing. Still nothing. Finally, I slid out of bed and grabbed the flashlight. The hallway floor creaked under me like it wanted to announce my presence. I checked the front door first. Shut tight. Deadbolt exactly how I left it. I cracked it just enough to peek at the screen. It was closed, too, the old spring pulling it snug. Wind, I told myself under my breath. Even on nights that felt dead calm, the ridge could send down these weird, slow gusts that sounded worse than they were. That had to be it. Still, I checked the back door for good measure. Locked. Everything looked normal. I went back to bed, but this time, I left the flashlight on the nightstand, angled toward the door like a tiny plastic weapon. The second sound woke me at 2:41, a thud. Not loud, but sharp, like something soft dropping onto wood. My whole body tensed before I even opened my eyes. I sat up, listening hard, and then came another sound. A slow drag, weight shifting across the floor. I slipped out of bed, my feet freezing against the old wood, and eased the door open. The hallway stretched empty, but every step I took made the boards moan under me. I swept the flashlight beam across the living room, over the couch, the chairs, the worn rug. Nothing. Then I saw the front door. The deadbolt was still turned, but the screen door wasn't closed anymore. It hung open an inch, swaying gently like someone had just stepped through. I stared at it so long my arms started to ache from holding the flashlight up. Tried to convince myself I'd left it that way, even though I knew damn well I hadn't. I closed it gently, hooked the latch, and stood there for a long second, with my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake something loose inside me. Then I forced myself back to the bedroom. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. My overnight bag wasn't on the chair anymore. It had been sitting there when I went to bed, right by the window. Now it was against the dresser on the far wall, the zipper hanging open like a grin. I froze in the doorway, gripping the flashlight so hard my fingers ached. I wanted to believe I'd moved it earlier without thinking, but I knew I hadn't. That chair was where I'd dropped it the second I walked in. The silence in that room didn't feel empty. It felt like something was holding its breath with me. No creaks, no footsteps, just the steady tick of the hallway clock, like a metronome for my pulse. I backed out slowly and pulled the door shut. My brain was firing off options. Grab the bag and make a run for it, or leave it and just go. The problem? My keys were probably inside. My shoes too. And then I heard it, light tapping from the hallway. One tap, then another. Slow and spaced out, deliberate, like someone testing to see if I'd react. That was it. I bolted. Didn't even glance at the bag. Didn't care about the shoes. I tore through the kitchen, out the back door, and into the freezing night air. Gravel shredded my bare feet as I sprinted down the road, lungs burning, heart slamming so hard it hurt. Behind me, the screen door slammed. One brutal crack that ripped through the quiet and rolled across the trees like a gunshot. I didn't look back. I ran until the black gave way to the faint glow of the old church at the crossroads. Didn't stop until I was inside, crouched against the altar. And that's where I stayed until the first light crawled through the windows. A family friend called me a few days before they left and said their mom was going into surgery. They needed someone to keep an eye on the place, make sure the pipes didn't freeze, grab the mail, feed the dog. That was it. Easy job. Honestly, I didn't even think twice. Work had been suffocating me for months. Constant calls, constant deadlines, constant noise. And the idea of a week in the woods sounded like the perfect excuse to disappear. No boss breathing down my neck. No Slack notifications pinging at 11 p.m. Just me, a dog, and a fireplace. I told myself it would be good for me, that it would feel like hitting a reset button. The drive out there was longer than I expected. 2 hours of regular highway, then 40 minutes of winding back roads that kept getting narrower until the pavement just gave up and turned into gravel. My GPS quit halfway, so I was relying on written directions and luck. The last stretch dipped into this hollow where the trees pressed in so tight the sky just vanished. It felt like driving into a throat. When I finally reached the clearing, the driveway wasn't much of a driveway at all, just 2 muddy ruts. My tires spun hard before they caught enough grip to push me to the top. The cabin itself was bigger than I pictured. 2 stories, steep roof, all dark wood, and a porch that wrapped halfway around like it was giving you a slow hug. It looked solid though, quiet. I cut the engine, and before I even made it to the steps, the dog trotted out. Daisy, a shaggy shepherd mix with a coat like an old rug. No barking, no hesitation. She walked right up and leaned her whole weight against my leg, like we'd been best friends for years. That made me feel better. The first 2 days were uneventful. I slipped into this simple routine. Wake up, throw a couple logs on the fire, feed Daisy, walk down to the road for the mail. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal. I thought I'd miss it, but honestly, the quiet was kind of nice. Evenings were just me reading by the fire or scrolling through old pictures on my phone, even though most of them wouldn't load without service. Nights were harder. The cabin made noises, long, drawn-out groans that rattled in the beams, sharp cracks that popped from the walls when the cold sank in. Every sound felt bigger out there, like the house was speaking a language I wasn't supposed to understand. I told myself it was normal. Old wood does that. The third morning is when I noticed the footprints. I went out back with the stove ashes, and there they were on the porch. Bare footprints. Not small either. Wide. Deep enough that last night's rain had pooled in the heel prints. At first, I told myself they were old, maybe from the owners. But then I saw the trail running down the steps. Dark smears of fresh mud curling toward the tree line. Daisy stopped dead in the doorway, hackles up. No bark, no growl. Just this low, steady rumble that rolled out of her chest like a warning she didn't want to give. Her eyes were locked on the trees. I grabbed a flashlight even though the sun was bright and stepped off the porch. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the kind of silence that presses down on your shoulders. The prints led about 15 feet into the trees before they just ended. Not faded, ended. Like the ground swallowed them. The mud ahead was soft, perfect for tracking, but there was nothing. Just leaves flattened in strange patches, like something had been there and then stopped existing enough to leave marks. I stood there longer than I'd admit, scanning the undergrowth for any sign of movement. Nothing. The woods just stared back. Finally, I told myself it was nothing. A hunter passing through, barefoot for God knows what reason. People are weird. This wasn't the city. Things happen out here. I said it out loud like saying it made it real. Still, that night, I slid a chair under the front door handle before I went to bed, just in case. The next morning, the chair was on the other side of the room. The door was still locked. Windows too, I checked them twice. My stomach dropped so fast, it felt like my bones went hollow. I tore through that cabin like a lunatic, every closet, under every bed, even the attic hatch with a broom handle like that would help. Nothing. No one. Daisy never left my hip. If I moved, she moved. If I stopped, she pressed into me so hard it was like she wanted inside my skin. That evening, I needed more firewood. The sun was bleeding out fast, that brittle gray blue before the dark takes over. My breath came out in clouds and the cold had teeth. I rounded the side of the house and that's when I saw it. The woodpile I'd stacked yesterday wasn't knocked over. It was rearranged. A perfect circle on the ground. Every log lined up like someone had measured the gaps. In the center was a dead bird, small, gray, feathers matted stiff with frost. Its wings were stretched wide, pinned flat like someone had laid them out on purpose. Its head was twisted so far back it looked like a question mark. I didn't touch it, didn't even step closer. I backed away, slow and steady, like I was afraid of waking something up. Inside, I locked every door, every window, every latch I could find. That night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat in the living room, poker clutched in my fist like a lifeline, the fire burning low because I didn't dare open the door for more wood. My ears strained so hard every tick of the cooling metal sounded like a gunshot. Sometime after midnight, it started. A scrape. Soft but clear. Long and slow across the wall outside. Not on the porch. Higher, up near the second floor. My skin prickled like frost spreading under it. Daisy went rigid, head snapping toward the window. Her growl vibrated so deep it buzzed through the floor. Then another scrape, farther along, like something was circling the house, dragging its fingers as it went. And then the glass moved, not shattered, moved, flexed, like something heavy was pressing from the outside. Then came the smear, a pale shape sliding across the pane, leaving wet, greasy streaks as it went. It looked like a hand, or like someone had seen a hand once and tried to copy it from memory. The fingers were too long, the joints bent wrong, and as they dragged down, they tapped, tap, 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 one finger at a time. Uneven, like it was trying to figure out a rhythm it didn't understand. I didn't move, didn't blink. My pulse slammed so hard I felt it in my teeth. When it stopped, the silence was worse than the tapping. I stayed frozen until the sky turned gray, every muscle locked, every nerve screaming. When I finally looked at the window, the streaks were still there. Prints, almost human. Almost. That was it for me. I packed in under 10 minutes. Clothes, toothbrush, didn't care what I forgot. Shoved Daisy into the truck and barreled down that mountain like the trees were closing in behind me. At the first gas station, I called the owners. Told them they needed to change their locks, maybe install cameras. I didn't mention the prints. Didn't tell them I'd left every light in that cabin blazing, and I've never been back to that ridge. My parents had left for the weekend to visit my aunt in Crestwood, a good 3 hours away. They offered to take me, but I stayed because of school. I'd done it before, so it didn't feel like a big deal. Our house sat way back in the hills, far enough that GPS barely worked and most maps didn't even bother to mark the road. If a car drove by, it was either the mail truck or someone who was very, very lost. Friday started out normal. I came home from school, tossed my bag on the kitchen chair, and spread my homework across the table. Knocked that out in an hour, heated up some frozen lasagna, and sat scrolling on my phone until my eyes started to feel heavy. I didn't mind the quiet. It was the kind of silence you'd just get used to living out there. Every so often, you'd hear a distant dog bark, maybe a truck rumbling on the highway miles away. But that was it. Before bed, I made my usual round. Locked the doors, pulled the curtains, turned off the lights except the lamp by the couch. That's what Mom always said. Keep a light on so it looks like someone's awake. Then I crawled into bed, curled up with my phone, and passed out. The first night, totally normal. The second night, everything changed. It started around 9. I was back on the couch in my pajamas, aimlessly scrolling TikTok, when I heard it. A knock at the back door. Just one, hard enough to echo through the house. It cut through the quiet like a gunshot. I froze, phone in my hand, and stared toward the kitchen where the back door was. My first thought was my parents. Maybe something happened and they came home early. But no, that didn't make sense. They'd have called. And even if they didn't, they couldn't have made that drive so fast. I didn't move for a solid minute, just sat there, ears straining for anything. Footsteps on the porch, a voice calling my name. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the tick of the wall clock behind me. Finally, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a branch fell. Maybe a raccoon climbed up the steps. We get those all the time. Sometimes bears, but they usually stick to the woods. I got up anyway, checked the lock on the back door, tugged the curtain shut, and went back to the couch. 30 minutes later, another knock. From the front door this time. I didn't even breathe. I just stared at the door like it might burst open on its own. Nobody knocks on your door out here. Not at night. People who live this far in the hills don't drop by. My parents had said it 100 times. If someone shows up after dark, it's not because they're lost. I waited, hoping for something that made sense. Car headlights in the driveway, maybe the crunch of tires on gravel. Nothing, just that thick, pressing silence again, heavier than before. Then came the third knock, not from the front, not from the back, from the side door. The one off the kitchen that opens to the steps leading down toward the woods. 3 knocks, 3 different doors. That's when it sank in. Whoever was out there wasn't lost. They were circling the house, testing every way in. My stomach dropped so hard I felt sick. I stood up slowly, reached for the light switch, then stopped cold. If I turned it on, they'd know where I was. If they didn't already. I backed down the hallway as quietly as I could, my socked feet barely making a sound on the floor. My phone was still in my pocket, and I clutched it so tight my knuckles ached. I thought about calling my parents, but I couldn't make myself do it. Saying it out loud, "Someone's here," would make it real. I was halfway to my room when the porch screen door creaked open. That sound, I can still hear it, clear as day. It's an old door, and when you push it all the way, the spring groans and stretches before it slams back. I heard the whole thing, the drawn-out squeal, then the soft thump when it shut again. Every muscle in my body locked up. I stood there in the hallway, frozen, listening to my own heartbeat thudding so loud it drowned out everything else. Then, nothing. No footsteps, no voice, just silence again. When I finally moved, it wasn't a decision. It was pure instinct. I bolted to my room, shoved the dresser across the floor until it jammed against the door frame and collapsed behind it. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped my phone trying to unlock it. For a long time there was nothing, just me sitting on the floor in the dark, holding my breath until my chest burned, straining to hear through the blood roaring in my ears. Eventually I started to believe maybe it was over. Maybe whoever it was had left. I even started typing a text to my mom. That's when I heard it, a slow, dragging scrape against the siding outside. It started at the corner of the house and crept toward my window. Metal against wood, screeching like nails on a chalkboard. So slow, so deliberate, the kind of sound that makes your teeth hurt. Then it stopped. A full minute passed. Then a voice, low, calm, just loud enough to carry through the glass. "Why'd you lock your doors?" My throat closed. My fingers shook so bad I could barely hit the screen. The voice came again, closer this time. "Right under my window. I saw you through the glass." That broke something in me. I slammed my thumb on my mom's contact and pressed the phone to my ear, praying she'd pick up. She answered on the second ring, and all I could choke out was, "Please come home. Please come home." She didn't even ask why, just said, "I'm coming," and hung up. Outside, the porch steps creaked again, faint, but I heard it. Whoever it was wasn't leaving toward the road. They were going toward the woods. I stayed by the door, every muscle tensed like a coiled spring, ready to run if I had to. Time dragged like hours before I finally saw a headlight sweep across the trees. Then my dad's truck roared down the gravel drive like a beast, engine howling. The second it stopped, he jumped out with a shotgun and shouted my name. I shoved the dresser aside so fast it toppled over and ran into his arms like my life depended on it. By then, whoever had been out there was gone. The next morning, we found the proof. Boot prints in the mud circling the house, big ones. They didn't lead back to the driveway. They went into the forest, toward the rocky slope where the trail disappears into miles of trees. That was the last time I ever stayed home alone in those hills. I was 17 when it happened. My parents left early that Friday for a wedding down in Tennessee. They were excited, talking about it all week. Some distant cousin's big day. They told me they'd be back late Sunday night and to keep an eye on the place. No big deal. I'd had the house to myself before. A weekend alone? No noise, no one asking me to do chores, just me in the house. I'd grown up out here, and isolation never bothered me. The woods behind our house? knew every trail, every rock and stream. The idea of something out there being dangerous never crossed my mind. We live on a ridge way back in the Appalachian hills. It's beautiful, but the quiet out here isn't like the quiet in town. It's heavy. Feels like it settles on your shoulders, like you notice every sound because there are so few. Nearest neighbor's almost 2 miles down a gravel road that snakes like a ribbon. When you step outside at night, you can hear coyotes calling from the next valley over. It's that kind of place. Friday evening was nothing special. I made a quick dinner, ramen and some leftover chicken, because 17-year-old gourmet, and tossed the dishes in the sink thinking, future me can deal with that. I sprawled on the couch with the TV humming in the background, just enough sound to make the house feel less empty. By midnight, I was in bed, lights off, scrolling through my phone. The windows were cracked to let in the cool air. Crickets were steady and loud outside. It was normal, completely normal. Until it wasn't. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not light, quick steps like a deer spooking in the brush. Slow, heavy on the gravel. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Someone walking. Someone human. Every muscle in my body went stiff. I just froze. The front door was locked, windows too. I checked earlier. My first thought was to grab my phone, but then what? Call the sheriff's office and say, hey, I think someone's walking near my house in the middle of nowhere? It would take them 30 minutes to get here, minimum. Whoever it was would be long gone by then. The steps got closer and closer. Then they stopped, right below my bedroom window. I held my breath. My heart was beating so hard I swear it was loud enough for them to hear. I didn't dare move, didn't even blink. I just lay there listening. A minute passed. Then another. My chest burned from holding my breath. Then crunch. Steps again. Moving away this time, back toward the trees. Each crunch fading until the crickets were the only sound again. I didn't sleep, not a second. Just stared at the ceiling, ears straining for any noise. When the sun finally came up, I told myself it was nothing. Had to be nothing. A hunter maybe, or someone cutting across the ridge. That's what I repeated in my head like a mantra while I pulled on my boots and stepped outside. Then I saw the tracks. Bare feet, not boots, not sneakers. Bare. The prints were big. Long, wide, with toes splayed like whatever made them had dug in for grip. They came straight from the woods, curved toward the porch, then circled the house before disappearing back into the trees. No other signs, no boot scuffs, no dropped gear, no tire marks on the road. Just those naked footprints pressed deep into the dirt like whoever it was weighed more than they should have. I stared at them so long my breath came out in little clouds, even though the morning wasn't that cold. Then I went inside, locked everything again, and told myself, people around here go barefoot sometimes. Sure, that happens. Kids swim in the creek, people wander, but that didn't explain why they'd come to my window, or why they'd circle the house in the dark. The rest of the day dragged. I couldn't relax. Every creak sounded louder. Every shadow stretched too long. I didn't even turn the TV on that night. Just sat in the living room with every light blazing like that would keep the dark away. Midnight crawled past. Then one, then two. My eyelids were getting heavy when the dogs started going insane. They were outside in the pen at the edge of the yard, and this wasn't their normal, hey, there's a deer bark. They were in full-on panic. Snapping, growling, throwing themselves against the fence like something was just out of reach. I bolted to the back window, flipped the light on. The yard was empty, just grass shining under the floodlight and the black wall of trees beyond. Then I saw it. At first I thought it was a stump. It wasn't moving, just a pale shape crouched low where the trees began. Then it shifted. The arms were wrong. Too long, they hung down like extra limbs. And the head, God, the way the head tilted. Not like it was looking at the dogs, more like it was listening. Slow and jerky, like something learning how a neck works. I blinked, and it was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. The dogs didn't calm down, though. They kept throwing themselves at the fence, teeth flashing, like whatever it was hadn't gone far. I grabbed the shotgun from the rack by the door. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped shells twice before I got it loaded. Then I sat there for the rest of the night, the gun across my lap, staring into the dark while my heart tried to punch its way out of my chest. By morning, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Had to. Probably a tree. Probably my brain filling in blanks because I was tired. Then, I checked the yard. The prints were back. More this time. Dozens of them, deep in the mud where the grass thins out near the woods. They trailed across the yard, up the hill, all the way to the house. Circled it. Again, every window had a set beneath it. Some pressed so close the toes angled up into the siding, like someone had stood on tiptoe, leaning in, like they were trying to look inside. My hand shook so bad I dropped my phone when I tried to call my parents. Didn't even wait for them to answer. I just threw some clothes in a backpack, locked every door behind me, and ran for the truck. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. Called my parents from a gas station 40 miles out and told them I wasn't going back there alone. My shift at the plant ended early that day, which almost never happens. Usually I'm there until the buzzer goes off and then some. It wasn't even because something broke down or we were short-staffed. Things just lined up right for once, and I was out the door an hour ahead of schedule. Felt strange. I remember walking to the truck thinking, well, this is new. The drive home never feels short, but that day it felt endless. Once the last gas station faded in the rear view, it was nothing but open road and the hum of tires. 20 miles of blacktop, then 5 more of gravel curling through trees so thick they shut out the sky in spots. I could feel the air change when the gravel started popping under the tires, like stepping out of the world everyone else lives in and back into the one that's just mine. After that stretch, there's only one thing: my dad's old house, leaning the same way it did when I was a kid. He built it himself, every nail, every board. No one else has ever lived there. After he passed last winter, I couldn't stand the thought of it sitting empty. It felt wrong, like the house would be grieving too. And truth is, I wasn't in a rush to live any closer to town. I've always liked having space around me, distance. That night, I didn't plan on doing much. Heated up leftovers, ate standing at the counter with one hand while flipping the radio on with the other. Just needed some noise because the quiet out here, it's not like town quiet. Out here it feels like it's sitting on your chest. No TV in the house. Never had one. The only station I can pick up comes in scratchy, but it's enough. People talking, some music, commercials for places I've never been. It feels like someone else is in the room. After I ate, I did my usual routine. Locked the front door, locked the back door, locked the mudroom door that goes out to the porch. Checked every window too. Always do. Out here, you don't cut corners. Closest neighbor's 2 miles down the ridge, and if someone wants in, nobody's going to hear you yell. By 9, I'd sunk into the old recliner with a book, just trying to let my brain settle. Halfway through a paragraph, I heard a scrape, soft, but sharp enough to make me stop reading, like something dragging slow across wood. I froze, with the book hanging halfway down. First thought, maybe a branch against the siding. But the trees don't grow that close on the north side, and there wasn't so much as a breeze outside. I sat there, listening so hard my ears felt like they were stretching. My heart was beating louder than the sound had been. After a full minute, it came again. Longer this time. Nails or metal, slow, deliberate. I put the book down and started walking the house. Checked every lock, every window, nothing out of place. Opened the porch door and stepped out just enough to look. Empty. The yard was empty. The woods stood out there like a solid black wall. You could feel how far you were from anyone. I told myself it was the house settling. even though I know that sound and this wasn't it. The noise didn't come back right away, so I tried to shake it off, turned the radio up a notch, sat back down, told myself, you're alone out here. You've been alone out here for months. Quit jumping at shadows. For a while it worked. I was back into the book when it happened again. But this time it wasn't a noise. It was something worse. Around 10, I got up to stretch, walked past the mudroom, and froze. The door was standing wide open. That door was locked. I'm not guessing. Locking up is something I do without thinking, like breathing. I remember the sound of the bolt sliding earlier. Seeing it open like that, I can't explain it. It didn't even feel like looking at a door anymore. It felt like staring into something that shouldn't be there. Just this black square, heavy and still, like the night was leaning into the house. I grabbed the shotgun from the rack by the fridge and stepped outside. The boards groaned under my boots as I scanned the yard. Nothing, no sound, no movement. The tree line sat 40 yards back, thick as a wall. If someone was in there, you'd never know unless they wanted you to. After a minute, I backed inside and slammed the door. Threw the deadbolt so hard it rattled. Told myself maybe I'd screwed up. People forget things. Happens all the time, right? Except an hour later, I walked into the kitchen for water, and the door was open again. Not halfway, wide. Like someone had swung it hard enough to hit the wall. I didn't go outside this time. I shut it fast and shoved the kitchen table against it, chair legs squealing on the floor. My pulse was in my ears so loud, I almost didn't notice the mat. The mat was wet, and there were prints on it. Small ones, narrower than mine, and too many, like someone had come in and turned slow circles before I walked in. That's when I called the sheriff's office. Dispatcher sounded tired, said a deputy would come out, but it could be an hour, maybe more. I hung up and sat at the table with the shotgun across my knees, staring at that door like it might breathe. The house was dead quiet, except for the radio in the other room. Some caller was talking about barometric pressure or something when I heard it. The creak, not outside, behind me. Inside, I turned slow. The hallway was dark, but I swear something was there. I didn't see it clear, just felt it. Like the air was thicker in one spot. I raised the gun and fired. The blast killed the sound in my ears and filled the hall with smoke. When it cleared, nothing stood there but splintered trim and dust. Then, from the mudroom, the door slammed open so hard the plates in the cabinet jumped. I ran. Out the front, down the steps, into the black. Didn't look back. The house belonged to my uncle, Eric. He worked out of state most of the year and hated leaving the place empty. When he asked if I wanted to stay there for a week, check the mail, keep an eye on things, I didn't even hesitate. Honestly, I needed the break. The city had been chewing me up lately. Sirens at night, neighbors slamming doors, constant noise buzzing in my head. A quiet stretch in the mountains sounded like breathing again. The drive out felt longer than I remembered. Maybe because I was alone this time, no one in the passenger seat to talk to. Just me and the road twisting through trees. At one point, I realized I'd gone nearly 20 minutes without seeing another car. That kind of silence doesn't feel peaceful when you notice it. It feels like you slipped out of the world. His house sat halfway up a slope tucked into the woods. From the road, it looked like a small cabin, but once you were inside, it opened up 2 levels. An open living room with these old timber beams and a hallway that always seemed darker than it should. I told myself it was the way the light fell, but every time I glanced down that hall, something in me felt like backing away. The first couple of nights were fine, uneventful even. My routine was simple: dinner around 8, watch something on the laptop, lock the doors before bed. I left the porch light on, even though no one was out there, maybe for the illusion that someone passing by would think twice, although let's be real, no one was passing by. That place was so far off the main road you could yell your lungs out and no one would hear you. By the 3rd night, I'd gotten used to the stillness. No cars, no voices, just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards. It was quiet in a way that pressed in on you, like the air had weight. That night, I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when I heard it. A knock, sharp, but not on the door, on the wall. I froze with my hands still in the water. The sound came from the far side of the house, maybe near the living room. I stood there listening, waiting for another. Nothing. Just the fridge humming and the faint echo of my own heartbeat. Probably a branch, I muttered, because apparently talking to yourself helps. It didn't. I went back to scrubbing the plate. Then it happened again. 3 quick knocks, higher this time, close enough that the glass above the sink shivered. I looked up, expecting God knows what. A face? A shadow? There was nothing but my own reflection staring back at me, pale and wide-eyed. The kitchen behind me stretched empty, glowing yellow under the light. I dried my hands and did a full sweep of the house. Every door, every window, even the basement latch, locked, curtains drawn. Outside, the dark felt solid, like it was pressed against the glass. That night, I left every light burning. Around midnight, I was on the couch, laptop balanced on my knees, when the porch boards creaked. I froze. Those planks were old. They complained under the lightest weight. But this wasn't a raccoon hopping around. These were footsteps, slow, heavy, countable. 2, 3, 4. I muted the laptop and held my breath. The steps shifted, slower now, like someone was adjusting their stance. Then came the knock. Not hard, not frantic, just a soft, deliberate tap on the front door. I didn't move, didn't blink. Whoever it was didn't speak. No hello, no call for help, just silence, stretching longer and longer until my lungs burned from not breathing. Finally, the steps started again, fading away toward the side of the house. I grabbed my phone, battery at 5%, barely a signal. I typed out "someone's outside," hit send. The little wheel spun, then failed, tried again, failed. I didn't call 911. Out there, even if you get through, they measure response time in hours. And saying out loud that I was alone, in a house lit up like a stage, made something in my gut twist. So I sat there, upright on the couch, flashlight gripped in my hand, pulse thudding like it wanted out of my chest. At some point, I must have dozed off, without meaning to. What woke me wasn't knocking. It was the sound of metal turning. The back door, not a rattle, not pounding. A slow, careful twist of the handle against the lock. I moved like I wasn't controlling my body, feet sliding silent over the rug, every breath shallow and quick. The kitchen stretched ahead like a tunnel. The door was a pale rectangle at the end. The knob shifted again, just slightly, like someone was testing it for give. I stopped a few feet away, flashlight raised like a club, and waited. The sound stopped. The silence after was so deep it felt alive. Then, faint, almost nothing, a single crunch of gravel, then another, moving away. I stood there so long my legs burned. When I finally moved, it was only to drag a chair under the doorknob and shove furniture against every other entry point I could think of. Sleep didn't happen. I sat by the front window, watching the black outside slowly bleed into gray. When the sun finally came up, I stepped onto the porch. The air stung like knives in my lungs. That's when I saw them. Prints in the frost, sharp as photographs. Big boots, leading from the steps to the far wall, looping back again. I didn't pack a bag, didn't even shut the lights off. I just grabbed the keys, climbed into the truck, and drove until my hands stopped trembling. I was 16 when it happened. My parents had gone to see my aunt in Fairmont that evening, and they told me they wouldn't be back until late the next morning. No big deal, they'd left me alone before. Our house sat halfway up a ridge in West Virginia. You couldn't really see it from the main road. Trees wrapped around it like a wall, thick enough that if you walked 10 feet into them, The house disappeared behind you. No neighbors, no quick escape. Just a gravel road that wound like a snake through the woods for almost a mile before hitting the highway. The house itself was small but solid. 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly like pine cleaner mixed with smoke from the wood stove. Everything creaked a little because it was old, but I liked that. It made the place feel sturdy, safe. That night, the air outside felt heavy, the kind of heavy that makes you think twice before opening a door. When the mountains go dark out here, it's not like night in town. It feels final. The porch light barely pushes back the black. Step past the edge of that glow, and it's like stepping off the map. I didn't dwell on it. I tossed a frozen pizza in the oven, dropped my phone on the kitchen counter to charge, and set up camp on the couch with an old DVD. Every door was locked, every window latched. The rifle my dad usually kept hanging above the back door was leaning against the wall next to me. Not because I was scared, that's just what you do out here when you're alone. By 9 o'clock, I was already restless. We didn't have decent Wi-Fi, and the cell signal was barely a rumor even on good days. I let the movie run and then started flipping through the static on the television just for background noise. It was weirdly comforting, like another voice in the house. And then I heard it, tires on gravel, slow, crunching their way up the drive. I froze. Nobody just drives up here by accident. That road doesn't lead anywhere except our house and an old coal lot that's been abandoned for years. The sound came closer, every crackle of gravel sharp as glass, until it stopped halfway up the incline. No engine cutting off, no doors opening, no voices, just silence. I muted the television and sat there, holding my breath, waiting for headlights to sweep the walls. Nothing. The darkness outside stayed solid. After a minute, I got up, pulled on my hoodie, and stepped out onto the porch. The driveway curved out of sight a few hundred feet down, swallowed by the trees. If someone had turned around, I would have seen taillights fading, but there was nothing. No glow, no crunch of tires backing out. I stood there for a while, just listening. All I could hear was the wind sifting through the branches. Finally, I told myself it was probably someone turning around and headed back inside. Locked the door again. Saturday down. Tried to convince myself I was fine, except I wasn't watching the movie anymore. About half an hour later, I heard the knock. 2 taps, slow, deliberate, on the back door. Every muscle in my body locked. No one uses that door. It's 4 feet off the ground with no steps, just a tiny porch big enough for 2 chairs and some stacked firewood. I grabbed the rifle and laid it across my lap, staring at the wall like I could somehow see through it. The knock came again. Same slow rhythm, like it wasn't asking to come in, just testing the walls. I didn't move, didn't even breathe loud, and then it stopped. I waited another 2 minutes, maybe longer, before I finally stood up. Slipped into the kitchen with the lights off, tilted one blind just enough to peek outside. Empty. The yard stretched away, pale under a sliver of moon. Trees hunched beyond it, black as a cave. The porch boards were bare. Then I noticed something else. The motion light by the shed hadn't come on. That thing always flicked on deer, raccoons, even moths could set it off. But now, nothing. Just dark. I backed away from the window and turned off every light in the house. The television went black, leaving only the hum of the fridge and the sound of my own breathing. I reached for my phone on the counter. Dead. The charger had slipped loose. Perfect timing. For a second, I thought about running. Cut through the yard, hit the trail, and follow it down to the logging road. But that meant leaving the house wide open. So I sat down on the hallway floor, rifle across my lap, where I could see both doors, and I waited. It was so quiet for so long that I started to think maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then the front doorknob turned. Just a twitch, like someone was testing it, slow enough that maybe I wouldn't notice. My chest clamped up. I raised the rifle and aimed at the door, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The knob stilled. Long silence. Then footsteps on the porch boards, heavy, slow. They moved toward the window. I didn't wait to see what came next. I bolted for the back door, slid the bolt, and stepped out into the yard barefoot, landing hard in the dirt. The cold stung my feet, but I didn't stop. My plan was to circle the shed, hit the tree line, and take the trail to the old road. The woods swallowed me in seconds. Branches ripped at my arms, roots caught my toes. My breath came out in ragged bursts, and my heartbeat sounded like footsteps behind me. Halfway down the trail, I glanced back. Someone was on the porch. A shadow where the light should have been, head tilted toward the trees. I didn't look again. I ran until my lungs burned, and the trail spat me out onto the logging road like a pale scar through the trees. That's when I saw headlights, a pickup crawling toward me from the ridge. I waved like a maniac. The truck slowed hard, tires grinding gravel. It was an older guy I'd seen at the feed store a few times. He looked at me like he already knew something was wrong. Didn't ask questions, just told me to get in. We drove back up together. The yard was empty. The porch was empty. Both doors were locked. Not bolted like I'd left them, locked, like no one had ever been there. I crashed at his place that night. My parents got home in the morning, pale and furious, swearing they'd never leave me alone again. My parents had planned a trip to Tennessee to visit family, and I stayed behind to watch the house. Just 3 nights. That's nothing when you've grown up in the middle of nowhere and had the place to yourself plenty of times. Our house sat way up in the Appalachian hills, deep enough that the road gave up on being pavement a good mile before you reached our driveway. Past that, it turned into hard-packed dirt that wound up the slope like someone had dragged it there by hand. Cell service died the second you hit that bend by the creek, which meant the rest of the world might as well not exist once you got home. Honestly, I liked it that way. Some people freak out about being alone out there, but to me, silence wasn't scary, it was normal. I grew up with that kind of quiet. It's so complete, it doesn't even feel like sound could exist in it. After a while, you stop noticing it, and when you do notice, it feels like something's wrong. The first night was easy. I ate leftovers, tossed on some old DVDs, stretched out on the couch, and let the glow of the television fill the living room. It was the same as any other night. Nothing unusual, no sense of being watched. No nerves buzzing in my stomach. Until about 2 in the morning, when I woke up to what sounded like the front door opening. It wasn't loud. Just a soft click metal sliding against metal, and then this slow, careful creak of wood. I froze with my head half off the pillow, eyes straining toward the dark edge of the room, trying to decide if I'd imagined it. The sound lasted a few seconds, then nothing. I held still for a long time, waiting for footsteps, waiting for some movement. The house gave me nothing but silence. I told myself it was the wind. The latch on that door is older than I am, and the frame swells when the air's damp. Houses shift at night. That's what people say, right? And I believed it, or at least, I convinced myself to believe it. Eventually, I lay back down, and sometime after that, I drifted off again. The next morning, the front door was locked. No scratches on the wood, no dirt on the mat. Nothing to make me think anyone had been there. That settled me for most of the day, long enough for the sun to slide down behind the ridge and the dark to roll back in like a tide. The second night felt different right from the start. I couldn't put my finger on why. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal, meaning it didn't sound like anything at all, but something in me felt off. When I stepped out on the back porch to smoke, that's when I noticed it. The chairs weren't where I'd left them. They were turned toward the woods, both of them. Not side by side anymore, just angled out, like someone had pulled them up to watch the tree line. I stared at them for a good minute, trying to explain it away. Maybe I'd done it and forgotten. Maybe the wind shoved them around a little. Except the wind would have blown them into the railing, not perfectly facing the trees like two people sitting for a show. That thought stuck to me like a burr all the way back inside. I locked the doors, every window, even checked the basement, which felt stupid while I was doing it, but I needed to know. Then I grabbed one of the kitchen chairs and shoved it under the front door handle like you see in old movies. It made me feel clever, safe even. The television stayed on low in the living room while I stretched out on the couch again. The gun cabinet was in the next room. I told myself that if something did happen, I was fine. Everything was locked. I had a rifle 20 steps away. That was enough. At some point, I fell asleep. What woke me wasn't a sound this time. It was a smell. Dirt. Damp and heavy, like someone had dumped a bag of wet soil right in the middle of the floor. It hit me the second I opened my eyes, And before I even processed what it was, I noticed the cold. The front door was wide open. The chair I'd wedged under the handle was still there, standing upright, like it hadn't been touched. But the door behind it had been swung open as far as it would go. Cold air pooled around my feet. I didn't hear anyone leave. I didn't hear anything at all. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone trying to check for a signal. Of course, there was none. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and went straight for the cabinet. Dad's old 30-30 lever-action rifle was in there. I loaded it, sat on the floor with my back against the wall, and aimed at that door until morning. When daylight came, I laughed about it. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I'd start thinking too hard about the smell in the door and how the hell that chair hadn't moved an inch. I forced myself outside, walked the property like everything was fine. That's when I saw the footprints, bare feet, small, maybe a size 6 or 7, pressed deep into the mud by the porch steps. They circled the railing twice, then headed for the tree line. I followed them until the ground swallowed them among the roots. I didn't know what bothered me more, the size of the feet or how deep they sank, like whoever it was had been hauling something heavy. That night, I didn't even try to relax. I locked everything again, shoved the chair under the door, and stayed in the kitchen where I could see every entrance at once. Every light in the house was on. The rifle leaned against the counter, and my hands never strayed far from it. Around midnight, I saw movement on the porch. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. But then the chair moved a slow scrape across the boards, like something was nudging it from behind. Then it shifted again, and again, not dragged, not thrown, pushed, careful. Like someone was making sure I noticed. I waited for a shadow, a face, anything in that glass. But there was nothing. The scraping stopped. The silence after was worse. I don't remember grabbing the keys, I just remember running. Boots slamming the floor, rifle slung over my shoulder. I didn't look back when I yanked the truck door open. Didn't look at the porch. I floored it so hard, the tires spat gravel into the trees as I tore down that dirt road like my life depended on it. The next morning, I came back with my neighbor. He didn't say much, but the look on his face when he saw the porch told me I wasn't crazy. Every chair was gone. We found them stacked in the woods about 30 yards back, not thrown around, not broken. Stacked, perfectly balanced, 7 chairs high, like some kind of totem reaching for the canopy. I didn't stay another night. Packed a bag, locked the door, and waited in town until my parents came back. I'm 24 years old, and last winter I agreed to do something that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. My parents asked me to check on my grandparents' old house in the Appalachian Mountains during a week of heavy snow. If you've never been out there, let me explain, this isn't the kind of place where you pop out for groceries or wave to a neighbor. The house is perched at the end of a gravel road that curls deeper and deeper into the hills until you feel like you've left the map entirely. No cell signal, no lights from nearby houses, just trees and ridges folding in on themselves. My grandparents haven't lived there for years. They moved to Florida for the sunshine and easy living, which honestly sounds great compared to what I was about to sign up for. Since they left, the house has been sitting mostly empty. My parents stop by now and then to keep it from falling apart, but it's the kind of place that feels forgotten even when you're standing inside it. They had a good reason for asking me. The winter before, a bunch of pipes burst when nobody was there, and the repair bill was insane. So this time, they wanted someone to stay during the worst of the cold snap, keep the wood stove running, make sure everything stayed in one piece. Simple job, right? Toss some logs in the fire, check the taps, maybe binge a few shows on my laptop. I pictured it like a rustic little vacation, a week of peace and quiet. The drive up was actually kind of nice at first. The hills looked like something off a postcard, all powdered white, and the road crunched under my tires in a way that made me feel like I was in one of those car commercials. For a while, it was just me, the hum of the heater, and nothing else. No traffic, no noise. Then the turns kept coming, sharper and steeper, and my signal dropped to 0. That's when it hit me I was really out there. When the house finally came into view, it looked smaller than I remembered. hunched between two slopes like it was hiding from the wind. The carport leaned just enough to make me question whether it could survive the next big storm. I parked under it anyway, grabbed my duffel, and crunched up the steps. The key stuck like always, and when I pushed the door open, that old smell rushed out to greet me: dust, dry wood, and something faintly metallic, like rust hiding in the walls. Not bad, exactly. Just stale. I dropped my bag in the upstairs bedroom and got the wood stove going. It let out a groan like an old man waking up from a nap, then settled into a low crackle. The house made its usual noises too, the pops and creaks I grew up hearing during summer visits. Back then, it never bothered me. This time, every sound felt louder, like it was leaning in to make sure I noticed. Out here, darkness doesn't creep in, it slams the door. One minute you're watching the last bit of gray sky through the window, and the next it's like someone painted the glass black. No glow from town, no headlights passing by, nothing. Just me and my reflection in the window if I looked too long. I figured I'd knock out early, lulled by the quiet. Nope. The silence wasn't what I thought it would be. It wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like the air itself had weight pressing down. I kept catching myself listening, like my ears were waiting for something I couldn't name. Nothing happened though, no reason for the tension crawling through me. Eventually I dozed off, but it was that light, restless sleep where every tiny sound nudges you awake. Morning felt like a relief. I brewed some coffee on the gas stove, burned my tongue on the first sip because patience isn't one of my virtues, and stepped out on the back porch to look at the snow. It was perfect, untouched, like someone ironed the entire yard. Except for one thing: footprints. A single trail coming out of the trees and heading straight for the porch. I just stood there for a second, holding the coffee like it might explain things if I stared into it hard enough. Then I set it down and walked closer. The prints were deep, spaced in a way that looked heavy, like whoever made them was carrying something or just weighed a lot. They stopped right at the edge of the porch steps. That was it. No turn, no trail back, just stopped. I crouched down, tried to see if maybe snow had drifted and covered the rest, but the impressions near the end were sharp enough that I doubted it. Still, I told myself the wind had probably buried the return trail. That made sense. It had to make sense. I went back inside, locked the door out of habit, and decided to stop thinking about it. Day 2 crawled by. I kept the fire fed, walked the perimeter while the sun was still up, checked the pipes under the sinks. Everything was fine, except I couldn't stop replaying those prints in my head. Every time the wind rattled a window, I flinched. That night, the cold settled in deep. The walls groaned like the house was bracing itself, and the shadows from the stove flickered across the ceiling while I tried to sleep. I told myself I'd adjust. I didn't. On day 3, the power cut out. Not as shock lines out there drop whenever it snows too hard, but when it happened, the house didn't just go dark. It felt darker than dark, like the black had weight. I lit a couple candles and set them on the kitchen table, telling myself it was no big deal, just a storm, just a house, just me. That's when I saw the back door, unlocked. I swear I'd locked it earlier. I remembered how stiff the deadbolt had been, how I'd had to lean into it, but now it was loose, hanging there like nobody ever touched it. My stomach dropped. My first thought was that I'd screwed up, that I'd imagined locking it because my brain was fried from the isolation. So I locked it again, slid the chain across the top, and checked the front door too. Both secure. I stayed downstairs for a while, sitting at the table, pretending to read by candlelight while every nerve in my body strained toward that door. Every pop from the stove made me twitch. Eventually, I convinced myself I was being ridiculous. Power outage. Creaky house, of course. I was on edge. I blew out the candles and went upstairs. Sleep didn't happen. Not real sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening so hard it made my ears ache. Then I heard it. A creak. Sharp, clean from downstairs. Like weight on a floorboard near the kitchen. I froze. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. I held my breath and waited for something else. Another sound, a whisper, anything. Nothing came. Minutes crawled by like hours. Eventually, I told myself it was the house shifting. Wood does that in the cold, right? Right. I stayed in bed until the first gray light smeared across the window. When I finally forced myself downstairs, the first thing I saw was the back door. It was open, just a few inches, but enough for snow to blow inside and form a thin drift along the threshold. The chain hung broken on the frame. The metal bent like it was nothing. Outside, new footprints led away from the porch toward the trees, bigger than mine. Longer strides, but every few steps, one foot dragged, leaving a faint trail like something being pulled. I didn't follow them. I didn't even look up at the tree line. I shut the door and turned the lock, even though it was pointless. I packed my bag in under 2 minutes, grabbed my keys and left. When my parents asked, I just said the weather was bad and I didn't feel safe staying.